Imagine a man found dead on a beach. No ID, no wallet, just a cryptic note in a hidden pocket that reads Tamam Shud. It is finished. This isn't fiction. This is the real-life, unsolved mystery that has captivated investigators, codebreakers, and amateur sleuths for over 75 years. On December 1, 1948, a discovery was made on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, that would launch one of the most enduring and baffling cold cases in history. A well-dressed man was found deceased, but his true identity, the circumstances of his death, and the secrets he carried have remained shrouded in an impenetrable veil of mystery. This case has everything possible: espionage, forbidden love, unbreakable codes, and a web of connections that span decades. Welcome to the Mystery Docket, where today we're diving deep into the case that continues to baffle experts worldwide: the Somerton Man. It was early morning on December 1, 1948, when beachgoers made a disturbing discovery on Somerton Beach, just south of Adelaide. A man, appearing to be in his 40s, was found propped against the seawall, his legs extended, ankles crossed. He looked almost peaceful, as if he'd simply fallen asleep watching the waves. But this was no peaceful slumber. The man was dead, and immediately something felt wrong. He was impeccably dressed: a brown suit, white shirt, red tie, and polished shoes. His clothes were expensive, well-tailored, but here's what's strange. Every single identifying label had been carefully removed. Not torn off in haste, but methodically cut away with precision. The man had no wallet, no identification, no money. Nothing that could tell police who he was. His fingerprints revealed nothing. They weren't in any database. His dental records matched no missing person reports. What they did find in his pockets was puzzling. An unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, some chewing gum, matches, and 2 combs. That's it. For a well-dressed man who appeared to be traveling, this was remarkably little. The autopsy revealed no obvious cause of death. No wounds, no signs of violence, but his spleen was enlarged and there was blood in his stomach. The pathologist suspected poisoning, possibly from a rare, untraceable substance. But toxicology tests came back inconclusive. Remember, this was 1948, and testing capabilities were limited. For months, the case went cold. Police had exhausted every lead, followed every missing person report. The man remained unidentified, buried in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery with a simple plaque reading, "Unknown Man." But then, for months later, investigators made a discovery that would transform this case from a simple unidentified death into one of the world's greatest mysteries. They found a hidden pocket, so well concealed that it had been missed in the initial examination. And inside this secret pocket was a small piece of paper with 2 words printed on it: Tamam Shud. These weren't English words. They were Persian, meaning it is finished or it is ended. But this wasn't just any piece of paper. It was a page torn from a book. And not just any book, but from a specific edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry. The police immediately launched a public appeal. Did anyone have a copy of this book with a page missing? And incredibly, someone came forward. A man found a first edition copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked car, parked just 400 meters from where the Somerton Man was discovered. The final page had been torn out, and it was an exact match. But here's where this case takes a turn into something that sounds like it's straight out of a spy novel. On the back page of this found book, written in pencil, was what appeared to be a code: Gobabt, Mliawi, Dimpanip, Mliaboayak, Samstgab. 5 lines of seemingly random letters. No spaces, no punctuation, no obvious pattern. This wasn't some casual doodle. This was deliberate, careful lettering. Police brought in codebreakers, mathematicians, linguists. The Australian government consulted with intelligence agencies. The code was sent to the best cryptographers in the world. And yet, 75 years later, it remains unbroken. Some experts believe it's a substitution cipher. Others think it might be shorthand or abbreviations for places and names. There are theories it could be the first letters of lines from another poem, or even coordinates to a location. But despite thousands of attempts by professional and amateur codebreakers, no one has definitively cracked it. What makes this even more intriguing is that beneath the code, faintly visible, was a phone number. When police traced it, it led them to a woman living in Adelaide. And this is where the human drama of this mystery truly begins. The phone number led police to 27-year-old Jessica Thompson, who lived in Adelaide with her husband and young son. When shown a plaster cast of the Somerton man's face, Jessica's reaction was telling. She appeared shocked, almost faint, and said she didn't recognize him. But investigators weren't convinced. There were too many connections. Jessica, it turned out, had worked as a nurse during World War II and had been stationed in Sydney. She had a particular interest in Russian poetry and literature. She was one of the few people in Adelaide who would have recognized the significance of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. More intriguingly, Jessica had a past connection to a man named Alf Boxall, who had given her a copy of the Rubaiyat during the war. When police tracked down Boxall, he was alive and well, but his copy of the book was intact. So whose book was found in the car? Jessica maintained her innocence, insisting she'd never seen the dead man before. But neighbors reported seeing her arguing with an unknown man in the weeks before the Somerton man was found. Others claimed to have seen her visiting his grave in the months after his burial. The mystery deepened when investigators learned that Jessica's son, Robin, had been born in 1947, just over a year before the Somerton man's death. Robin had some unusual physical characteristics. A distinctive ear shape and dental formation that were remarkably similar to the Somerton man. Years later, when Robin grew up, he would be asked about his parentage. His mother always told him his father was her husband, Prosper Thompson. But doubts lingered, and Jessica took her secrets to the grave when she died in 2007. Over the decades, theories about the Somerton man's identity have ranged from the plausible to the extraordinary. The spy theory, the most popular theory, suggests he was a spy, possibly Soviet, operating during the early Cold War period. The removed clothing labels, the untraceable poison, the unbreakable code, it all fits the profile of an intelligence operative. The fact that this happened in 1948, just as tensions between the West and Soviet Union were escalating, adds weight to this theory. Adelaide was home to rocket testing facilities and had strategic military importance. If foreign agents were operating in the area, it would make sense. Some researchers have even suggested the Somerton man might have been involved in Operation Venona, the U.S. program to decrypt Soviet intelligence communications. The rejected lover theory. Others believe this was a case of unrequited love gone tragically wrong. Perhaps the Somerton man was Jessica Thompson's lover, the father of her child, who came to Adelaide to win her back or confront her about their past. When she rejected him, he took his own life on the beach where they might have once walked together. The Tamam should note, "It is finished," could have been his final message about their relationship. The code might have been a love letter, personal references only Jessica would understand. The medical mystery theory. Some researchers focus on the autopsy findings. The enlarged spleen, the blood in his stomach, his overall physical condition suggested he might have had a rare medical condition. Could he have been seeking treatment in Adelaide? Was his death natural, accelerated by an unknown illness? But here's what makes this case even more intriguing. There may have been other connected deaths. In the months before and after the Somerton man was found, several other unexplained deaths occurred in Adelaide. All involved well-dressed men with no identification. Were these connected? Was there a pattern investigators missed? For decades, this case remained frustratingly cold. But in recent years, modern technology has opened new possibilities. In 2009, researchers gained permission to exhume the Somerton man's body for DNA testing. Hair samples were extracted and analyzed, but the DNA was too degraded for comparison with potential relatives. However, in 2019, researcher Derek Abbott made a breakthrough. He had spent years studying the case and believed he had identified the Somerton man through genealogical research and DNA analysis from surviving relatives. Abbott's theory focused on Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne who had disappeared around the time the Somerton man was found. Through complex family tree analysis and comparing DNA from living relatives, Abbott built a compelling case. In May 2021, South Australian police announced they had extracted DNA from the Somerton man's hair and were conducting new tests. The technology that didn't exist in 1948 or even in 2009 finally provided answers. In July 2022, South Australian police officially announced that they had identified the Somerton man as Carl Charles Webb. The identification was confirmed through advanced DNA phenotyping and genealogical analysis. But here's the thing, even with his identity confirmed, many questions remain unanswered. Why did he remove all his clothing labels? What did the code mean? Was he really Robin Thompson's father? What was his connection to Jessica? And most importantly, was this suicide, murder, or natural death? Knowing that the Somerton man was Carl Webb answers one crucial question, but it opens so many others. Carl was born in Melbourne in 1905, worked as an electrical engineer, and had a history of heart problems. He was separated from his wife and had been living alone. This explains some things: why he wasn't reported missing, why his fingerprints weren't in the system. But the mysterious elements that made this case famous remain unexplained. Why the elaborate preparation, removing labels, carrying the cryptic note? If this was suicide, it was unlike any other. If it was murder, it was extraordinarily sophisticated. The code has never been broken. Jessica Thompson died without ever admitting to knowing him. The connection to the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam remains puzzling for an electrical engineer with no known interest in Persian poetry. And then there's Robin Thompson. DNA tests in recent years suggested he was not Carl Webb's son, but the timing and physical similarities continue to raise questions about Jessica's past. This case has inspired countless books, documentaries, amateur investigators, and even academic research. It's been called Australia's most intriguing unsolved mystery, and despite the identification, it retains much of that intrigue. The Somerton man's story reminds us that even in our connected, digital world, people can still disappear into mystery. That sometimes, the most ordinary-looking situations can hide extraordinary secrets. The case of the Somerton man teaches us several important lessons about missing persons investigations and the importance of preserving evidence. First, this case shows how crucial DNA technology has become in solving cold cases. What seemed impossible for 74 years became solvable through advances in genetic testing and genealogical research. Second, it demonstrates the value of never giving up on unsolved cases. Researchers like Derek Abbott spent decades pursuing leads, and their persistence ultimately led to identification. But perhaps most importantly, this case reminds us that behind every mystery are real people with real stories. Carl Webb wasn't just an enigma. He was someone's son, husband, colleague. Jessica Thompson wasn't just a mysterious woman with secrets. She was a mother protecting her family and her past. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide or dangerous relationships, please reach out for help. There are people who care, and there are resources available. No mystery is worth a life. The identification of Carl Webb as the Somerton man closed one of the longest-running cold cases in Australian history, but it didn't solve all the mysteries. The code remains unbroken, his motivations unclear, and his final hours a puzzle. What do you think really happened to Carl Webb? Was this an elaborate suicide, a case of espionage, or something else entirely? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on the Mystery Docket. If cases like this fascinate you, please consider subscribing to hear more stories that challenge our understanding of truth, identity, and the mysteries that surround us. Important disclaimer: the content presented in this video is based on publicly available information, court records, news reports, and research materials. All theories and opinions expressed are for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not responsible for any actions taken based on the information presented in this video. Always consult official sources and law enforcement for factual information regarding criminal cases. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the most intriguing mysteries are hiding in plain sight.